inspections. But just wanted to point it out because this has come up quite a bit. If you're in a commercial transaction right now and you have specific questions, just give me a call later on and we can talk about it. Okay, so the COVID amendment / addendum, what's the difference? So you probably know this already. An amendment is a document that amends something that's already in existence. For example, once we're in escrow and we change something, technically it's an amendment. An addendum is generally something that accompanies that first offer or the counter offer. The words really don't matter and they're used interchangeably a lot. So don't worry about what that is, but even when you look at our contracts that come from HAR or some of the standard forms we use, you'll see the words sometimes used interchangeable, but I just wanted to point that out. The other thing, similar to our purchase contracts and counteroffers now, there is a place for a principal broker to sign at the top of this before the client sign. And then also the receiving principal broker signs this again before our clients sign it. Okay, so please follow that protocol if you do end up using this, just like signing a purchase contract or anything else. Okay, and this is right before the signature box for the buyer and seller. And as always, we recommend buyers and sellers consult with attorneys before signing anything. And this is bolded out for us in there. So point it out, that's our disclaimer. Hey, have your attorneys take a look at it. Okay, so let's get into what this is. So at the top, the first paragraph is really just a recital. Don't really need to review this thing or go through it, but you can see what it says, just talking about the current event that's happening. Second paragraph is the one we're going to focus in on. This one I'm just going to read. Accordingly, in the event that complying with the provisions of the purchase contract is not possible or practical as a result of unforeseen circumstances related to COVID-19, such as, and they give a list of different things in here. For example, they give another list of things in here, and then they say, or otherwise, herein defined as unforeseen circumstances. Then the buyer and seller agree as follows. This is the place where I have a little bit of issue with this one. And this is just too broad, it's too vague, it's really almost impossible to define. Unforeseen circumstances related to COVID-19. I have a sniffle today. I can't leave my house. I can't sign. Therefore, I want to trigger these potential things in the purchase contract. So I'm going to circle back around to this thing, but I think this is the one issue that makes this addendum a little tough to use for the first section. And there's something important in the next one we'll take a look at. So let's go and take a look. After that paragraph, there's 4 options. The third option is just to terminate right now. We both agree we're going to terminate, buyer gets your deposit back. The fourth one, other, we don't really need to spend any time on that, but let's take a look at the first 2. So the first one just simply extends the closing date pursuant to F2. Again, this hasn't happened, but certainly you could just pick some time out in the future or whatever you want to do. Now, the 2 parties have agreed right at this moment in time, we're going to extend out until this moment if there is one of these unforeseen circumstances. But it goes on to say, if that doesn't, if it still exists by this date, then either the buyer or seller may terminate and all buyer deposits, etc., are returned to the buyer. This is the problem, right? In the event that unforeseen circumstances still exist. Oh, I still have a sniffle, whatever that unforeseen, undefined circumstance is. In my opinion, and I think for the way we want to go forward with this thing, we don't want to use this paragraph, so we would NA this one. We don't want to use it. So look at the second one. This just simply keeps whatever the existing closing date is, but now is saying, if that unforeseen circumstance still exists by our current closing date, again, buyer or seller can terminate. To me, that's not really acceptable. It's too vague, too wide. The buyer or the seller really unfairly could terminate this without, with a minimal cause, so to speak. So I think this also would be an NA. And then the final 2, number 3, to just terminate it, If we're going to terminate, we probably would terminate under another clause. And this particular addendum requires both the buyer and seller to agree to these terms. I don't think we want to use this to terminate. And then I don't really foresee any circumstances right now that we need to do that. I'm sure something will come up in the future. But the net effect of this, because of this unforeseen circumstances clause, my advice and what we want to do going forward, if this addendum is used, we are going to NA all four. 1, 2, 3, 4 is NA. Now we'll continue on with it because there is something important in this addendum. Okay, so now we've gotten down to the bottom, and we're going to take a look at this paragraph in the event that a recording date, and this is where it gets interesting and something that we do want to use. In the event that a recording date at the Bureau cannot be ascertained due to COVID-19 related matters, F1 closing date is hereby amended to the date, and it goes on to explain what that is. What's F1? Probably haven't looked at F1 in a long time. This describes how we define closing. And in the state of Hawaii, we define closing as the moment when all the documents are recorded at the Bureau of Conveyances. You know this. So our buyers sign 3 or 4 days before, the loan funds, our escrow companies are holding on to it. They get everything to the Bureau, and the day it records, hey, congratulations, the funds dispersed, here's your keys, we move forward. That's how we define closing. Many states across the US do not define closing as that. Florida is a good example. So for Florida, closing is the day everybody signs and the funds come in and the funds go out and you hand the person the keys. Recording in the Bureau of Conveyances can take place 30 days later, 45 days later. But the closing date is that date that everybody agreed to. We were doing some condos in Orlando, selling it to Hong Kong, and those were 45 to 60 days later before it would ever record. But the closing date was that date. So what the escrow companies have worked out with the lenders and what they're used to doing in their other offices across the country is to change how we're going to define closing. And that's what this paragraph relates to. This is something that's very good. Right now, if you're in an escrow and we're coming up to this moment and God forbid the Bureau closed because of this COVID, there's no ability for one of the parties, buyer or seller, to unilaterally say, hey, let's do this. Both parties have to agree. So technically, somebody could terminate if the Bureau was closed and this had not been agreed to. So for existing escrows, this would be really good to get in now. It's going to prevent the buyer and the seller from terminating under this F1. As we move forward into the future, we want to include this for our purchase contracts and our counteroffers because this is a very good addendum to use. I've also taken this out and put it into our standard addendum. So in the event that this COVID addendum is not used, we've now inserted this into the standard, which just gives us a little bit of that backup. So my advice, if you have a existing or you're going to go forward with something else, but the other broker's insisting on using this addendum, we're going to NA all 4 options, and then we're good to go. If we get into a situation where some broker is adamant about keeping one of these ins, it's totally a negotiation between the buyer and the seller. It's just like negotiating the number of days for J1. This is something that has to be agreed to on the parties. If you have an existing escrow, we may want to add this, but again, we're going to NA all 4 options. And in fact, I shouldn't say may want to. We do want to add this, but we want to NA all of those options. Okay, so that's kind of it. Down and dirty, safe and quick. Not safe, but I mean quick and to the point. And I mean, it goes without saying, I miss all you guys. It's very odd, right? We're all learning how much we really love to connect with each other. But just stay safe, stay healthy. We'll all get through this thing together. And probably next week, we're going to do another one of these webinars, online things. Would love to hear what you thought about it. Okay, we all take care, and we'll talk real soon. Bye.